Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Andres, and today I'll be talking about the sequel to Dune, Dune Messiah. I just finished reading this book. I just went through a binge, read through the first one, immediately started the second one because I just wanted to see what happens right after. Even though the first book is pretty conclusive in its story, this video is going to be structured into, I guess, four parts. First, I'll go over like a basic synopsis or plot summary of the story and what happens in the book. Next, I'm going to go through the things I like, then the things I did not like, then the conclusions with an overall rating of the book. So what is Dune Messiah about? Essentially, it takes place around 12 years in the future after Dune. Paul, at this point, he's the Padisha Emperor, ruler of the universe. His sister, Aliyah, she, I guess, is now 15 or 16 years old, and she is the Reverend Mother, or like her, like the head priestess of the empire. But yeah, this empire is very much a religious empire influenced by the Fremen's beliefs, culture, and traditions. So there's a lot of influence from them, and basically there's a few factions within the empire. Like obviously there's Aliyah, who's like the church of the empire. There's Stilgar, who's like an advisor for him. There's also a new group form called the Kizarat that's formed by, I think, his old Fedaykin or Death Commandos from the original Dune. And they're basically kind of like the hyper-religious zealots that clamor for tradition and like want to like log in scriptures the actions of the Muad'Dib. So they're like the very hyper religious side of things. And basically, the story revolves around this plot to overthrow or eliminate Paul and Aliyah and essentially the Atreides Empire. And this plot is concocted by the Ben Gesserit mother, or I guess the Ben Gesserit as a whole. Also, the guild, the guild from the previous book who oversaw like space travel. Actually, also involved in the plot is Irulan, who is Paul's wife, official wife, but he's still basically just with Chani. And finally, a new faction called the Bene Tleilah, who are, I think, brand new. I don't remember reading about anything about them in the first book, but essentially they're more of a technological faction, maybe harken to before when like computers and such were more important, so they're seen more like with more disdain, which might make sense why we didn't hear much about them in the first book. But essentially, they're known as face dancers. They can transform their appearance, they're chameleons, and they also can bring back people from the dead using their genes, I guess, in some shape or form, which is seen as like taboo completely by all sides. But the plot revolves around bringing back Duncan, Idaho, of all people, from the dead. He's gonna come back. He's given as a gift to the Emperor, and he is the key to bring down Paul's empire. So this book is very different from the previous one. It's very much a book about completely political intrigue. There is some lore like in the first book, but it's a lot of conversation, a lot of talk about the ethics, the morality, the philosophy surrounding Paul's actions, Paul's powers, how much is he really in control, and looking back into like the how were things in the past, and now like a lot of Fremen are doubting how things are now versus how they were in the past. They've changed as a society. There's a lot of repercussions for the things that have happened, even outside of the like global death toll that's I think over billions at this point. Besides even just that, like even the victors, which is the Fremen, they don't feel completely happy about things, and they feel like they've changed in their ways. So there's a lot of talk about this critical like reflection on everything that's happened so far. So if you are expecting a very like traditional sci-fi storyline, like there is a story here, don't get me wrong, but it is a very slow story. It's a lot about people sitting in rooms and talking and plotting, or sitting in rooms and criticizing like Paul and his actions, and what he is able to do, what he isn't able to do. So just keep that in mind if you're coming in expecting, I guess, something else. So what did I like about the book? Overall, surprisingly, the biggest thing that comes to mind is Paul. Obviously, as a character, I really enjoy him, and I really enjoy this like deconstruction of him and this like overly like reflection and thinking about everything that he's done, everything that he's been forced to do in a lot of ways because of like his position as a prophet, and like the wheels that were set in motion. But also the love between him and Shani really surprisingly took a forefront, at least in my mind, for the especially the latter half of the book. Chani to me seems like a tether to his more human side outside of the prophet and this mythical persona. And I just love these aspects about the story and about like how love can transcend all of this. So that was a great part of the book in my opinion. Also seeing like just this reflection on things and seeing how like the culture has shifted, and there's people that are like more conservative, and like it felt really realistic and really grounded in how things are in our world, how like people look back on things and they want things to go back to how they were, and they lament what they've gone through, even if maybe in some ways things are better now in terms of like progress with the land of Arrakis. And finally, the last thing I really liked was Duncan Idaho's character. He is a main player in the story, and I really liked him. I felt that his reflection over, he is a toy that is being used to bring down the empire, but also he's like his own person, and he's has these conflicting emotions. I don't want to give too much because this is not a spoiler video, but his character as a whole I really liked, as well as Aaliyah's character. I find really interesting. She is just like Paul, someone that was thrust into this position. She didn't ask for it. She even, I mean, in the first book, survived a conscious birth, which is insane to hear that she was conscious throughout, like the whole time she was or most of the time she was in the womb. And since she's been a child, she's been conscious of things, and kind of has had the memories and lives of all the previous like Reverend Mothers in her head. So her transition also now as a teenager is very interesting because she has to behave more mature, but she's in a teenage body. So there's, I guess, like some urges and things that she can't really quell. I will say though, and this is moving now, I guess, to my dislikes, some of the stuff that goes on with the teenage stuff, I mean, it's not for me personally. I'm not gonna expound too much on it. It's not like very ever really like lewd in any way. Don't get me wrong, or very explicit, but it just makes me feel weird because I mean she's still a teenager. But yeah. And then I guess the only thing I really didn't like about the book, and this is kind of maybe a thing more I'm still debating, is this book, it feels very different from the first book. As I said, the first book is, I would say, a lot more show than tell. In the first book, you're shown the life of Paul, you're shown his visions, right? What the visions he's going through, all the other players in the story. And there are talk about like one key moment is Kynes, I think is the name, the planetologist from the first book. When he's dying, he sees his father, and his father talks about like unleashing Paul essentially to the Fremen and how that will be the downfall of them. And so there is some talk of that kind of stuff, but it's not nearly as overt and explicit as here. Here it feels like if I, after the first book, I went with my friends and we all met up and we just discussed it, and then kind of compiled a lot of those thoughts into these characters, for them to like discuss it in the context of this story. There's a lot of talk directly to Paul about his actions, about who he is, and in general, it is interesting, and I did like a lot of the conversations that were had, a lot of the philosophizing about everything. But it also kind of, in some ways, in my opinion, makes things less open-ended and kind of closes a little bit the doors into how things are supposed to be taken, which I could see for some people it might be more of a negative. For me, it was kind of like a mixed thing. But besides that, to be honest, I love the book. I'm still not sure if I like this one over the original. I think I like them for different reasons. The first one is just a great epic space story about like the chosen one, but with a obviously very big twist about criticisms of the chosen one, and there's a lot of omens about things to come. This is kind of like the resolution after the climax of the first book, where the whole book is just us dealing with the consequences and repercussions. So very different books. I would say this is a much sadder book, surprisingly, and a more reflective book, more emotional book. I will not lie, I did cry at one part of the book. I got emotional. I'm not gonna say why, but I did get really sad at a part of the book, and so maybe in some ways, I think I might like this a little bit more than the original. Obviously, this book, it stands on Dune, right? You can't read this book on its own. You need the context of everything. But given the context of everything, I think it perfectly encapsulates what Frank Herbert was trying to say. And it's a good bookend to the journey so far. I am not going to keep reading, at least for now, like Children of Dune and God Emperor of Dune. I like where this ends, honestly. I really like the ending. I love the ending, and the resolution of everything it made so much sense, and felt so perfect. Um, and so I don't think I'm going to keep going, but I still loved it. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think it was amazing, spectacular, and if you love the first book and if you like those kind of heady themes and discussions and conversations, definitely read this one. If you, I guess, are more of a person that's into the lore of things and the lore of all the factions and the Harkonnen and the Atreides and the Corino, the houses, Landsrat Guild, whatever. There's still some of that here, but that's not the focus, right? It's more of a reflection of the actions that Paul took and what happened in the first book. So I would say this book might not be for every fan of Dune. It will be for a lot of people that love Dune, but not for everyone. Especially, I would say, if you just watch the movies, definitely read the first book before going into this one, before just jumping into the book, especially because they're adapting it into a movie, I think December of 2026. So read the original book before you jump into this one. Don't just watch the movies and then jump into this book. But yeah, let me know if you guys have read this book. What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you like it as much as the original? Were you let down by it? Do you think it's a required reading? What do you think about Paul's journey in this book and the actions he took and like the repercussions and everything? What do you think about Aaliyah's character, Duncan Idaho's character in this book? Yeah, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.